Welcome back to the second segment of our four-part Beef Roundtable discussion on how the change in Washington leadership might impact agriculture and the beef industry in particular. In the first segment, we talked about President Trump and his selection of Sonny Perdue to head the Department of Agriculture. In this segment, our guests, Steve Dittmer and Jay Truitt, will focus on the GIPSA rules and rulemaking process. I'm Dr. Ron Lemonager, Beef Extension Specialist at Purdue University.
And I'm Bert Rutherford, Senior Editor of Beef Magazine, and I'm based here in Denver. Our guests are Steve Dittmer and Jay Truitt, as Ron mentioned. These are two gentlemen who are very in tune with what's going on in Washington. I think you're going to enjoy their discussion.
What about the GIPSA rule? I've had some indication from some people that have had experience with Purdue in Georgia that they don't think he would sit well with the idea of the limitations that the GIPSA rule, or at least our part of the GIPSA rule, would have on our branded products. The GIPSA rule basically would say, let's go back and do what we were doing, selling cattle on the average, let the packers sort them out and figure out how to handle things. We're not going to worry about paying for quality. We're not going to pay premiums for anything. And then, of course, if you do that, people don't like to discount. So that kind of backwards thinking, robbing us of all our tools and our rewards for producing quality products, they don't think he would go along with that and would help us fight that. Kind of a feel you get for that in Washington, Jay?
Yeah, I think the general consensus right now is that what you just said is completely accurate. Well, GIPSA, maybe as much as any agency that you see inside of USDA, this is my personal opinion, but that agency can actually turn on its head and do an about face maybe as fast as any little agency that I've ever seen. And really it depends on the leadership. A lot of that stuff that comes through that channel ends up being somebody's interpretation, whose ox is being gored and how you actually feel about it. At the end of the day, my personal opinion is that there's no reason for beef or pork at all to be involved in this conversation. It started off about poultry contracts. They probably ought to have that conversation, finish that, be able to resolve that issue once and for all inside the industry and figure out what the resolution is. To me, it seems like the guy from Georgia should be able to lead that conversation in the industry, especially when everybody that's involved in the industry goes through there at some point or another during the year. So I think actually you can bridge that gap. We'll see who the GIPSA administrator is. I think that probably turns out to be one of the ultimate key job slots that the beef industry for sure had better keep their eye on.
Anybody in mind, Jay?
No. And in reference to just the way the overall, this goes back to the conversation about how the Trump administration is actually establishing itself. Mind you, it kind of eliminates the people like me out of contention for almost anything in town, which is a good thing for America. Don't think that I'm saying that's a bad thing. But it does take a lot of people that would know how to go into that job and kind of start day one and do that job. It takes them off the table, and it puts somebody that just brings a different set of expertise in. There's a lot of people in the industry that could be the GIPSA administrator and the undersecretary for the agency over that position, but it's probably not going to be somebody that's young and has a lot of DC experience unless they come from Capitol Hill. Just because of the limitations on being able, you can't have lobbied for 2 years prior to on any of the issues that you're going to be responsible for. And you have to essentially sign a pledge that for people like me, it would be a career finisher for me, because in 5 years they're going to turn me out to pasture and nobody will want to meet me anymore anyway. So the lobbyist ban, which again, I support it. I think it's good. public policy, and even though it negatively affects a lot of people I think are really smart that could do the job, I think it's the way that you have to do it.
So let me ask a follow-up question here for just a second, Jay. And that really gets into, you said, this was really a poultry discussion as opposed to a beef industry. But there have been some people that have thought that the GIPSA rule has implications for, packer ownership of cattle and being able to pay premiums and discounts for different kinds of cattle. Do you not see that as being part of the direction of that train moving, or is that recallable?
No, I wholeheartedly believe that we're going to continue to see people increase in the percentage of cattle that are in brand programs or in some sort of a structured program inside the industry. But just at a structural level, there's virtually no packer ownership of calves or of grass-based entities. There may be some incidental numbers here and there, but the reality is that structurally there's a significant difference between the way our industry has and probably for as far ahead as I can see is going to be structured in comparison to the way the poultry industry does. The real crux of this inside the poultry industry, I mean, from all the history that I've been involved with, revolved around how contracts were actually structured from the very beginning of that animal, and that essentially people's home operation operating loans, and then now their material loans and that mortgage itself all get tied up into that contract in some way, shape, form, or another. And obviously the packer or processor, however you want to refer to them, have a different relationship with those people than they do in the beef industry. We still have a luxury in the beef industry that you can choose who you sell your cattle to. And it's one of those things that really has changed. Secondly, though, within that, the identification of that value, there's 2 or 3 entities inside the beef industry that have taken this whole genetics evaluation and predictability systems, to a level that I don't think most of us really thought would happen for a long, long time in the beef industry. But we're beginning to see that. So, and the value of that, or the ownership of that information, and the ability to control how it's actually put out, is still being owned and operated on the producer side of the equation in the beef industry. So if there's anything, I actually think the producers are becoming more empowered with their bargaining power with the processor in a real fact-based way, in a way that's real dollars. Listen, we all know there's $200 or $300 difference in these carcasses moment to moment, and maybe twice that in a lot of circumstances. So let's allow that to play out. I'm not one of the people that I just don't believe in conspiracies, because I know that greed and egotism almost always blow up a conspiracy, and so I don't buy that in our industry that we're the victim of it. Again, I only say that the poultry industry ought to have the discussion so we can stop having it. I don't have any idea about whether or not it's real or not, but they've been ignoring it and not talking about it and not resolving it now for about 30 years, and we get pulled into that battle just because we could. The people that know me know how little I like to eat chicken, so that whatever they do doesn't bother me at the end of the day.
Well, and part of that shift of power that you were I think has to do, I'm not sure what this is doing, so we have, as an industry, paid a lot more attention to the consumer, and that's pulled power away from everybody to a focus on the consumer, and that's what kind of things the GIPSA rule would prevent have enabled us to do, is to focus on their wants and needs instead of just what the packer wants or what the producer wants. And we've got to keep that up. That's where we've made our real progress in quality and consistency and predictability in the industry since the 80s, when we went all for lean and muscle.
That wraps up our segment in our discussion on how GIPSA rules and rule making are impacting animal agriculture. Please join us next time when our guests, Steve Dittmer and Jay Truitt, will discuss the 2018 Farm Bill and how it might impact you at the ranch gate.